you would, open your Bibles to the book of Ephesians. I'm going to be looking at verse 20 tonight. I want to do a word study, and I don't do a lot of word studies, but sometimes they're kind of interesting to see how they play out in scriptures. So, with that in mind, if I had you to play a word association game where I mention this word and you would have to say something that kind of your mind associated with that word, if I put on the screen, if I had the screens down and the PowerPoint going, if I had God is and then a blank there, what would you put in the blank? What word would you put in there to fill in that sentence? God is what? The most common probably would be God is love. You may also think of maybe God is holy, or God is glorious, or God is, whatever. There's 1,000 words that you could put in there to fill in that blank, because there's several things about God. He's just got all kinds of attributes that are just great and magnificent. So when we think about love, I think, like I said, that was probably the one that most people would go to, and you'd think about first. Think about the love of God. How is that proclaimed and how is that shown to us? Well, everything that we have and everything that is given to us is because of God's love, and in His holiness and His grace and all those things kind of fit the bill in how we do the things that we do, and when we start thinking about God. But what we want to look at tonight is a word that comes from Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 20. It says, "Now to Him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us." So we want to look at this idea of God is able. The word able it's a really small little word. It's just a 4-letter word that maybe you don't really think a whole lot about, and in the grand scheme of redemption and how God works and all that, it's just sometimes it's overlooked. But the word able is really a very big deal whenever it comes to God and it comes to our faith in God, because that word able is what our entire faith is built around, the ability of God to do what He promises He's going to do. So God is able. That's kind of what we want to build this lesson on this evening. So when we think about what can God do, is God strong enough to do the things He said He's going to do? Does He have enough power to do the things He said He's going to do? Is He faithful enough to do those things He's promised that He's going to do? Is He able to do these things? Well, the Bible says that He is, but we're going to kind of spend a little time with that in just a second. But the idea of being able to do something, whenever you have in your mind things that you want to get done, your heart's in the right place, and you see a need that needs to happen, and you want to get it done, but sometimes you're just not able to do that. And we see this in the human realm all the time. So able, the ability, is kind of like the power supply behind the motivation of God. I was thinking about this afternoon. You can think about a battery, and if you have hearing aids or you've seen hearing aids, the battery that powers a hearing aid they're tiny, just little bitty things. Like this word able is a really little word, but it powers the motivation behind God. And if God wasn't able, He wouldn't be fulfilling the promises that He is fulfilling and He's promising to fulfill. Now think about in your life times that you've seen things where you wanted to do something but you just couldn't get it done. I can think of a couple just kind of come to mind for me. There's one that's personal, and some things are just kind of not necessarily personal, but just kind of things. But one thing that I was thinking about whenever I was looking at this lesson, and the word able is at school, our goal as teachers to get everybody motivated and to get everybody to learn and to get everybody to kind of realize the importance of learning and the importance of school and the importance of hard work and all those things. I have a student, and I'm not going to mention names because some of you know who he is, but I have a student who is a smart boy. I mean, he's a really smart boy, but he's a goofball. He doesn't do anything. He just kind of, he's lazy. He just kind of, he's there. So it's my want to get him to see and to motivate him to do something. but he has zero willpower to do what I want him to do. So I'm not able to get him to learn. But if I were in God's shoes, I would have the ability to make that kid do what I wanted him to do, or do what I could do. So that's how ability is done. Another thing that's kind of a little bit more on a personal level, some of you may remember, but a couple years ago, Aiden was in the hospital. He had some really bad headaches, and that was a time that a young man passed away from meningitis. And, you're sitting in the hospital room, you're willing and you're wanting for him to become better, to get better, to do, but you're not able to make them do that. Why do we sit at the hospital? Why do we do these things? And why do we pray for people? Because it's something we're not able to do. But if we were like God, it's not a problem. Again, and we all face those moments where we're looking at something and we're saying, if I could only, if I could just, but we don't have always the ability to do that. Sometimes when we watch the news and we see all the violence and all the turmoil and all the things that are going on in society, and then the hurricane hit North Carolina, and you had one city that was underwater for basically a little over a week, and people are wanting to get in there to get this place cleaned up, but they're just not able to do it until something happens. So it's the idea behind that. But in God's view, ability is not a problem. He promises, and He makes many promises to us. He's promised us salvation. He's promised us to take care of us. He's promised all these things to love us, to forgive us, to walk with us, to bring us home. He's promised us all this wonderful stuff. And these are desires of God's heart. They're things that He's giving to us. He wants us to be a part of these desires in His heart. But can He back these things up? Is He able to do all that He's promised? If He had the desire, but He wasn't able to do them, then His intentions are powerless to redeem mankind. If He doesn't have the ability to send Jesus to earth to die on the cross, then all of what we're doing now is worthless. He intended to do something, but the ability wasn't there, then we're doing something in vain. So His ability is there to make our salvation known unto us. So the word able, again, it proclaims the truth that God is capable enough, He's strong enough, and He has enough power to work in our lives. How it works, I don't know. Just start thinking about it, and you start trying to figure out how God works and His abilities. If you think too hard, your mind might explode, because you just can't understand everything that you need to understand about God. And one particular thing I want you to look at tonight is in 2 Kings chapter 6. And it just kind of shows a little bit about how God works and His abilities that is beyond my comprehension. Because you think about all the things that goes on behind the scenes that are working in our lives, and we really don't have a clue what all God is doing. But I think this particular passage of Scripture, we're going to start in verse 6. Start in verse 8, and we'll see that I'll just start reading. Okay, 2 Kings chapter 6, beginning at verse 8. Now the king of Syria was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be in such a place, in such and such a place. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. Then the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, and he was watchful there, not just once or twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of the servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet who is in Israel. Tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So that just in my mind is it's uncomprehendable how God talked to somebody just and was able to relay what somebody else in another area is thinking. So that's boggling in and of itself. But he says, so he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there. And they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots And his servant said to him, Alas, master, my master, what shall we do? So he answered, Do not fear, for those who are with us are far more than those who are with them. So you got this city encircled around by this army, and Elisha's telling his servant, hey, don't worry about it. No, we outnumber them. And you think about this great army that's surrounding your city, and you're thinking, how in the world can we outnumber these people? Because we're stuck inside here, and they're out there, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of horses and chariots, and they're gonna get us. That's kind of the mindset that this guy has in his head. And Elisha says, don't fear, don't worry about it. So Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So what Elisha is showing this servant of his, not to worry, because you've got this army here of Syrians who are they could kill you. Yeah, they could. But God is able to deliver you from the hand of the Syrians, right? Then he opens his eyes, and he really sees how God is working behind the scenes, that just kind of, that stuff like that, it just proves the ability of God. If God can take care of this situation, then what in my life is so big that he can't take care of my life? His ability to do that is it's beyond measure, beyond belief. So he's able to meet every promise and answer every prayer and to guide every moment that we have and to love us every minute of our day. He's got the ability to do that. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. We're going to look at 3 or 4 scriptures to kind of go along with this idea of God's abilities and the word able. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. He said, And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always having all sufficiency for all things may have an abundance for every good work. So what is God able to do here? He's able to make grace abound towards you. And then why is he able to do that? So that you're able to do good works. God is able to do that for us. And it's going to work out. His ability is going to put us in a position to where if there's good that can come of it, he's going to allow us to do those good things. So he's going to give us grace so we can have abundance of good works. So go to 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 12, just a couple of pages over. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 12. For this reason I also suffer these things. Nevertheless, I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that he is able to keep what I have committed to him until that day. So what is he able to do here? He's able to guard us. He's able to protect us. He's able to keep us against the things that are going to hurt us. Not from a physical standpoint. Now, he could keep us from a physical standpoint from being hurt, but this is not the context that he's looking at. All those fiery darts that Satan is throwing at us, he's able to guard us from those things. And that's what Paul is reminding Timothy. And how long is he going to do that? Well, until that day. And that day would be the day that the Lord returns. Look at Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18. For in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. So his ability to aid us when we're tempted goes along with what Paul was writing in the passage just before in 2 Timothy. He's able to help us through our temptations, and he tells us why he's able to do that. Well, he suffered the same things that we suffered. Now, it's not on the same exact scenario that we go through, but the idea that he's been tempted, he's suffered through the trials and the temptations of life, and he's made it through successfully. And since he knows what it's like to be a man tempted by anything under the sun that a man is tempted by, he can help us to get through those things we deal with on a daily basis. So he's able to aid us through temptations. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 2. He can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray, since he himself is also subject to weakness. So what can he do here? What is he able to do here? He's able to have compassion on people. The writer uses the word ignorant and wayward. There's another version that uses the word wayward. again, why is he able, or how is he able to have that compassion? Well, it tells us he's had moments of weakness. He's subject to weakness as a human, as a person. There were times in Jesus' life where he was weak, where his spirit was down, where his body was tired, where he was just physically drained and mentally drained and emotionally drained. And because he's gone through that, he's able to have compassion on us when we get physically drained and mentally drained and emotionally drained and just seem like the world is caving in on us. He can help us and have compassion on us who are doing that. He has compassion on those who are ignorant, those who don't know. And that doesn't mean that if you're a lost person in the Amazonian jungle, way out in the center, it doesn't mean that they're going to be saved because they're never. But he has compassion. That's where the long suffering of God comes in. He has that compassion because there might be somebody who's going to take that gospel and plant that seed over there in those places. So he has compassion on those people who are ignorant. And then he uses the word gone astray. Christians who have decided that they don't want to be Christians anymore. He has compassion on those. And again, that ties into his long suffering as well. Maybe, just maybe, that somebody will say something, or somebody will do something, or somebody will show somebody something who has left the church that they can, bring them back and try to reach out to that person. So he's able to do that. Now look at Hebrews chapter 7, verse 25. Therefore, he is also able to save to the uttermost those who come to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. So what is he able to do here? He's able to draw us near to God. He's able to save us if we're going to go and draw near to God. He uses the idea of coming to God. That's something that puts out there that you have to do something. You have to show him something in order for him to save you. But he's able to do it. It's like he's throwing that life preserver out there, and if you're drowning, what do you want to do? You want to grab hold of that life raft, that preserver, so he can pull you in. But if he throws the life raft out there and you don't grab hold of it, then he can't do anything for you because you're refusing what he has offered to you. But he's able to do that again if we draw near to him. And I think that right there you can use to refute a lot of false information that's out there that sometimes is being taught that just because Jesus died, everybody's saved. It doesn't work that way. And that's what the writer here is telling us. You have to come to God in order for him to save you. And then look at Jude 24. Now to him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. So he's able to keep you from stumbling. That goes along back with temptations and those things that we deal with on a daily basis that Satan tries to put out there so that we'll stumble and fall. And Jesus is able, God is able to keep us from stumbling. What's Paul say? He's going to provide a way of escape for us. And those are those things that he does for us. And he provides those things. And he doesn't just do it begrudgingly. He doesn't say, I did it again. Johnny's tripped over this again. I guess I got to go save him again. I guess I got to reel him in. That's not how he works. He does it with exceedingly great joy. He wants us to avoid those things. He wants us to keep from falling into the temptations that we get, that we find ourselves dealing with. So he does it with great joy. So we see a couple things that God is able to do, but God also wants us he wants our hearts to really understand and rest fully on the knowledge that he's able to do everything that he says he's going to do. Look at the book of Psalms. We're going to look at chapter 34. And we're going to kind of look at it backwards. We're going to look at the end before we look at the beginning. Psalm 34. Well, not all of the book, but some of the verses. Chapter 34. Start at verse 4. We're going to read 4 through 7. He says, I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and delivered me from all my fears. They looked to him and were radiant, and their faces were not ashamed. The poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him, and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps all around those who fear him, and delivers them. from what this writing is telling me, this is David. He's dealing with the little subtitle of my Bible says, "The Psalm of David when he pretended madness before Abimelech, who drove him away when he departed." So he's dealing with Abimelech, and he's got all these things going on. You can read the book of Samuel to see all the context of this, but there's all these things in David's life that he's dealing with. And what does he do? Does he lose his mind? No, he fakes losing his mind, but he doesn't lose his mind. What does he do? He says, "I sought the Lord." You know, he's making a statement to us like we read a minute ago. He's seeking, he's going after, he's drawing near to God. And because he's drawing near to God, it says God hears him. You know, if we're in a situation where our life is encompassing and closing in around us, and we don't draw near to God, and we don't go and search for him, and we don't look for his helping hand, it's just the antithesis of this. He's not going to hear us. You know, we have to reach out. And he delivered me from all my fears. You afraid of anything? There are things in your life that just kind of bother you, that just kind of get you. You know, there's things, I think everybody has these things. And if we get take them to God, and he can help us to overcome that particular fear. And they looked to him as they were radiant, and their faces were not ashamed. The poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him. So he's making that analogy. You cry out, and what is he going to do? He's going to save you from all the troubles that you find yourselves in. So from this passage, we read that whatever the fears that we face, and I didn't live in David's life. I didn't walk in his shoes, but I've read enough of the things that he went through to know he faced some pretty big challenges. He dealt with some things that probably a lot of people just would crumble under the pressure of. But he didn't let that bother him. He knew where he could get his deliverance. He knew where he could get his guidance from. And the Lord delivered him. So he's able to do those things. He's also, we see, that he's able to transform us and remove some of those things that we're ashamed of. In verse 5, you transform, he says, they looked to him and were radiant, and their faces were not ashamed. So you see that transformation of a person. I don't know if that's exactly what it's talking about, but I'm thinking maybe, you know, that's how your soul looks to God. Whenever you become a Christian, it's no longer dark and dreary, but it's now radiant to God. And you don't have to be ashamed of your past and ashamed of the things that you did, and because they're gone. And that's what God is able to do that. We also learn that there's nothing too big, too complex, too far gone. There's not a person who's too sinful to be able to be reached by God. You know, you can read a little bit later on about all the things that David did that were sinful. We won't go into those because you know. David wasn't too far gone to come back to God. Nobody in this building is too far gone. Nobody in this world is too far gone for God's ability not to be able to reach that person. Let's go back to the previous 3 verses and just look and see. It says, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make its boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear of it and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together." That's the key right there. He's telling you how this is going to happen, how it comes about. It's all in our attitude towards God. You know, bless the Lord, even when things are going bad. Even whenever it seems like your life is it is worthless. Nothing's going on. You still bless the Lord, and then he's going to make sure that things work out for his people. David puts his whole trust in God's ability. This word able was not a problem for David. He saw it far too many times, the ability of God to deliver him from, even when he was a young man in the shepherd, tending sheep, delivered him from the bear and the lion and all those things, and that he attributed that to God's ability for deliverance. So I'm going to end this up with the idea of our life and worry, and the things that we stress over, and the things that we kind of to make bigger than they really are. Those things that we worry about, they seem to be indicators of the places in our lives where we need to let God's abilities to sink deeper into our hearts. And God knows that I'm one of the biggest ones who needs this lesson, because I let things stress me out probably more than they should. But when we worry about these things, you know, we're looking at it from a perspective of it's all about me and my life. But if when we turn it over to God, then we look at it from a perspective of we trust God's ability to do, an ability to help, an ability to, it's putting a measuring stick on who's stronger. Am I stronger or is God stronger? When I start worrying about it and getting stressed out about it, I'm thinking that I'm strong enough to deal with my problem. But if I let God help me and deal with it for me, that stress and that worry goes away. So it's how this things work. Now look at Matthew chapter 9, verse 28, and then the lesson will be yours. Think about this idea of God's ability, and Jesus is talking to some blind men here. He says, "And when he had come into the house, the blind men came to him. And Jesus said to them, 'Do you believe that I am able to do this?'" So he asked them a very simple question. They needed some seeing back. They needed their eyes back on. And Jesus asked them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" And their answer was very simple. "Yes, Lord, we believe." Do you believe in God's ability to do the things that he says he's going to do? Whether it's salvation for the alien sinner, whether it's returning a sinner back to God, whether it's helping through whatever stressful situations are in your life. Do you believe in his ability to do that? These blind men did. If you're dealing with something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be brought before the church, but if you're dealing with something in your life, I would encourage you to do what you can to hand that over to God. If you're here and you're not a Christian, this lesson wasn't about the plan of salvation, but if you're not a Christian, do you believe in God's ability to save you? If you're at the age of accountability, then that's something that needs to be in your mind. Am I worthy of being saved? Well, of course you are. And God can do that. God's the only one who can. If you're here and you need to respond to the invitation, we ask that you come on, stand and sing this song.